Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like she was ordering silence. Don't touch me. I'm not in the mood. Her tone wasn't angry, just bored, like I was a song she'd already skipped too many times. I remember standing there, holding a cup of cold coffee, watching her fix her hair in the reflection of the IKEA cabinet I built with my own hands. Everything in that house was assembled by me. Every screw, every shelf, every detail. She just lived in it. And that night, I realized she'd stopped living with me long before she said those words. It was a Thursday, late. She had a business dinner at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. She said it like it was routine, like it was part of the job. The word client had become her armor lately. Every time I asked why she was dressing up like that for a meeting, she'd laugh. You wouldn't understand. It's how influence works. I understood perfectly. I just didn't want to admit it. The first sign came weeks earlier. She left her laptop open, Dropbox still logged in. I wasn't snooping. I was sending her a file for our studio. But there it was. A folder titled Phase 2, Client Relations. Inside, drawings I'd made, contracts I'd signed, and messages that didn't belong in a project folder. Compliments from the investor. Jokes too personal. Photos that didn't belong in business. I didn't confront her. Not then. Architects don't demolish. They assess, measure, and plan the exit route before the walls come down. That night, when she came home past midnight, she smelled like his cologne. I asked how the dinner went. She said, productive. He's close to signing. Then she brushed past me, took off her heels, and muttered that line, "Don't touch me. I'm not in the mood." I didn't argue. I just stopped touching anything. By morning, I moved like someone tracing the outline of an ending. I opened Apple Notes, created a checklist, simple, precise, unemotional. 1. Transfer company shares. 2. Move essential files. 3. Draft legal separation. No more questions. No more noise. She traded affection for access. I traded silence for control. That's when the transformation began. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a man realizing the power of not explaining himself. The next morning, she was already gone. A note on the counter said she had an early meeting with the client team. I stood there, reading that line like it was a confession written in plain sight. Her coffee cup was still warm, lipstick on the rim. She always used to text me from the car, some small thing like grab milk or don't forget the keys. That morning, nothing, just silence. I drove to the studio in my Volvo XC90, the same car she once called too quiet for a man. The engine barely made a sound, but that suited me. Silence had become my ally. On the way, I passed the Ritz-Carlton. Her car was parked outside, same spot as last night. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Some truths are louder when you don't look directly at them. At the office, my partner, Jason, looked uneasy. He said her client, had called asking for revisions. The tone of that call was too casual, too familiar. Jason didn't say it out loud, but he knew something was off. That's when I realized this wasn't just personal, it was professional. She hadn't just crossed a line. She'd blurred the entire blueprint. Later that day, I opened LinkedIn to check the client's updates. There it was, a new post. Productive weekend with a brilliant team. Excited for what's next. The photo showed him, smiling, his arm just barely behind her shoulder. Not touching, but close enough. Enough for everyone in our circle to notice. Comments below, power couple energy. She's going places. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd rewritten our story publicly, turned our partnership into her performance. I didn't rage. I didn't call. Instead, I opened a private Dropbox folder and began transferring every essential document, every drawing, every contract that still had my name on it. Quiet, precise, surgical. Architects understand structure and how to dismantle it from within. That night, she came home late again, laughing on the phone before she walked through the door. She looked surprised to see me awake. I just smiled and said, "You're late." She said, "Deadlines, you know how it is." But I wasn't thinking about deadlines anymore. I was thinking about endings. Over the next few days, I watched the distance between us grow in centimeters, not miles. It was in how she stopped saying good morning, how she spoke to me like a colleague, not a husband. Every sentence had become a transaction. Every glance was brief, calculated. She'd started to wear perfume she never used before. Not for me. For someone who could open doors she thought I couldn't. At the studio, I pretended nothing was wrong. I designed, reviewed plans, met deadlines. But every line I drew felt like a quiet farewell. One afternoon, while finalizing renderings, I saw a shared file pop up in our Dropbox, one I didn't recognize. It had her name on it, and his initials beside it. Out of habit, I clicked. There was nothing explicit, nothing incriminating. Just a tone. A way they spoke that stripped me of my place in the story. Words like partnership, vision, our project. Not our company, not our team. Just their world now, built with bricks I laid. That night, she came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, tracing the edge of my wedding ring on the wood. She dropped her bag, poured herself wine, and said the client wanted a private strategy meeting over the weekend. The kind that required the Ritz-Carlton suite, apparently. She said it as if it were normal, routine, even necessary. I didn't reply. I just nodded. She looked at me, slightly annoyed by my calm. She said, "You're being distant." I wanted to laugh at the irony, but I didn't. Architects don't improvise with emotion, they design outcomes. So I let her think I was fading quietly, that I was slipping into the background. While she packed for her weekend meeting, I opened Apple Notes again. Added one more line to my checklist. Separate personal from joint accounts. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. The kind that only comes when you stop explaining what someone has already chosen to ignore. When she left that night, she kissed me on the cheek like you'd pat a coworker goodbye. The door closed, soft and final. I didn't chase it. I just watched the light from the hallway fade, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It just confirmed what I already knew. Something had ended, long before either of us said it aloud. She was gone for 3 days. I didn't call, didn't text. I went to work, came home, cooked, slept. It was the quietest weekend of my life, and the most productive. I reorganized the studio's financials, updated all contracts, and ensured every document reflected one truth. My name, my ownership, my control. Architects learn early that if you don't claim your blueprint, someone else will redraw it. On Sunday night, while she was still away on business, I drove downtown. Not to the Ritz-Carlton where I knew she was staying. I had no need to see what I already understood, but to the studio's site for our new client project. It was a glass front building, still under construction. I stood there, looking at the steel frames catching the city lights, and realized something simple. She had been building a shortcut, and I had been building foundations. When I got home, I opened my laptop and drafted the final version of our partnership restructuring. It was clinical, exact, emotionless. Then I sent the documents to my lawyer with one note. Execute Monday morning. That night, I checked her LinkedIn. She had posted a picture of the hotel's view, captioned, "Grateful for opportunities that push me forward." No mention of me. No mention of the firm we built together. Just her reflection in a window that overlooked everything I'd designed. The next morning, I left the house early. The Volvo hummed beneath me, steady and calm. I stopped for coffee, parked outside our office, and waited. When she finally walked in, hair done, sunglasses on, voice too bright, she acted like nothing had changed. Maybe in her mind, nothing had. She still believed she controlled the narrative. But I had already disappeared from her version of it. Quietly, strategically. That afternoon, I sent her an email from my work account. No subject line, just a message. Check your inbox. Attached was the transfer agreement and my formal notice of separation. Everything legal, clean, and irreversible. No arguments. No drama. When she opened the door to my office, she looked pale. I didn't look up. I just said, "You don't have to explain." She said nothing. And for the first time in years, that silence didn't belong to her. It belonged to me. She didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. Instead, I drove the Volvo through the empty streets until the city lights thinned into darkness. I didn't know where I was going, and for the first time, that felt fine. The noise of her voice, her explanations, her negotiations, they had all been replaced by the hum of quiet air and the rhythm of my own breathing. The next morning, I walked into the office early. Jason looked nervous. He told me the client had called again, this time angry. Apparently, some documents he'd sent to the investors were now under review. Something about inconsistencies, signatures that didn't match. Jason didn't know it was me who'd sent the anonymous tip. I'd found the irregularities weeks ago, buried in shared folders she managed. He'd been using false invoices to secure leverage over our studio, and she had been covering for him. Not for loyalty, for advancement. It took one email to expose him. No lies, no slander. Just facts. Architects work in truth, in numbers and measurements. I simply sent those truths to the right people. By afternoon, the investors team had suspended his account pending a full audit. The project was on hold. Her shortcut had collapsed on itself. That evening, she walked into the studio, pale, silent. Jason left quietly, sensing the storm. She asked if I'd heard what happened. I nodded. She said, "This could ruin everything." I said, "Then maybe everything needed to be ruined." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. The version of me she knew would have argued, begged, tried to fix it. But I wasn't that man anymore. I had stopped trying to restore things that were designed to fail. When she left, I sat alone in the office, the glow of my monitor flickering against the glass walls. The space felt lighter, emptier, but not lonely. I realized I didn't need her apology. I didn't need closure. What I needed was peace. And peace comes when you finally stop building for someone who keeps moving the walls. The fallout came faster than I expected. Within a week, her name started disappearing from conversations. Clients stopped copying her in emails. The developer went silent, his accounts frozen, his office sealed for compliance review. I didn't have to say a word. The truth was doing the work for me. At home, the atmosphere changed too. She moved around like a ghost in a house that suddenly wasn't hers. Her confidence, the thing she'd worn like armor, was cracked now, sharp and uneven. She avoided my eyes, spoke only when necessary, always about logistics. "Do you want me to move out first?" she asked one night. I said nothing. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was final. The next morning, I saw her sitting on the couch, scrolling LinkedIn endlessly. Her profile had once been full of likes and comments. Now it was quiet. I could tell she was refreshing, waiting for someone to notice her again. She didn't understand that when respect leaves, attention doesn't matter anymore. Later that day, Jason mentioned how everyone in the office was whispering. Not about the scandal, but about how calm I was. That's the thing about composure. It unnerves people more than anger ever could. I drove home early, stopped by IKEA to pick up new shelves for the studio. It felt strange walking those aisles alone, the same ones where she once laughed, pretending to argue over furniture names. Back then, I thought we were building a life. Now I realized she'd been decorating a stage. When I got home, she was sitting by the kitchen window, a glass of untouched wine in front of her. She said she'd gotten a message. Her mentor at the developer's firm was advising her to take a break from the industry until things settled. She said it like it was a temporary setback. I knew better. In architecture, once the foundation cracks, the structure never stands the same again. She asked if I hated her. I didn't answer. I just said, "You made a choice." Then I walked past her, upstairs, and closed the door. It wasn't anger. It was the sound of something ending precisely on schedule. Days turned into a strange routine. She was still in the house, but it felt like living beside an echo. We'd pass each other in silence, exchange polite nods, sometimes the smallest fragments of conversation about bills or schedules. I didn't mind the quiet. It gave me space to think, to breathe. She, on the other hand, began to fill it with nervous movements, cleaning, rearranging, pretending to stay busy. The woman who once chased control now couldn't handle stillness. I started spending more time at the studio. Late nights, early mornings. The team had noticed the shift. I was sharper, more focused, more precise. Work felt clean again, untainted by negotiation or vanity. When people asked about her, I gave simple answers. She's taking time off. That was all they needed to know. One night, after leaving the studio, I stopped at a small cafe across from the Ritz-Carlton. I hadn't been there since everything happened. Through the window, I could see the reflection of the hotel's logo, bright and gold against the night. I wondered if she ever looked up at it now and thought about the cost. Not the money, not the career, but the dignity she traded. Back home, she was sitting in the dark living room, scrolling through old photos on her phone. I saw our vacation pictures reflected in her screen, the smiles, the easy warmth that used to exist between us. She quickly turned the phone face down when she saw me watching. I didn't say anything. She asked if I still planned to file. Her voice was small, almost careful. I said it was already done. She looked at me for a long time, eyes searching for some version of me that might still be reachable. But the man she'd known, the one who always softened, who waited, who forgave, was gone. What stood before her now was built differently. Later that night, as I lay awake, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't leave her. I simply stopped showing up to a place where I was no longer respected. The rest was just logistics. I woke up before sunrise. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft tapping of rain on the windows. She was still asleep in the guest room, the same room she had moved into weeks earlier without us ever discussing it. I stood in the hallway for a moment, looking at the closed door, then walked away. Some walls don't need to be torn down. They just need to be left standing, untouched, until time erases their purpose. That morning, I signed the final divorce documents at the firm. My lawyer looked at me, waiting for some reaction, relief, anger, maybe even regret. But I felt nothing. The paperwork was just a formality, a signature confirming what had already ended long ago. When it was done, I stepped outside, the air cool and clean after the rain. Driving back, I noticed how different the city felt. The same streets, same buildings, but somehow sharper, quieter, more mine. I stopped at a red light near her office. The company name still hung above the door, but her name was no longer listed on the directory. She had been replaced, efficiently, quietly, like she never existed there at all. When I got home, she was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her. She looked up, as if she had been waiting for something, some final argument, some proof that I still cared enough to fight. But I had nothing left to prove. She asked if I wanted to talk. I said there was nothing to say that hadn't already been said by her actions. Her face tightened, like someone realizing too late that the silence they created had turned against them. She said, almost whispering, that she thought she was doing it for us, that the deal would have secured everything. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I finally understood her. She was fluent in ambition, not loyalty. As I walked past her, I said one sentence, calm and even. You built your future on shortcuts. I'll build mine on foundations. Then I left her there, with her coffee, her phone, and the quiet she'd once demanded. After that day, she barely existed in my world. I moved out quietly, leaving only what was necessary behind: documents, the house keys, and a note that said, "You don't owe me words." I didn't block her number, didn't erase the photos, didn't delete her name from anything. I simply stopped engaging with it. Distance isn't always miles. Sometimes it's silence that builds between two people until one realizes the other has already gone. The studio thrived. Projects came in faster than we could accept them. Clients wanted clarity, precision, things I'd learned to value again. People said I seemed different, calmer, focused. I didn't tell them that calm isn't peace. It's just the absence of noise. Occasionally, I'd see her name surface online. A new photo, a vague caption about growth and starting over. But the likes were fewer now, the comments quieter. She wasn't hated. She was just forgotten. That's worse. When someone builds their worth on attention, indifference becomes the sharpest punishment. Months later, I saw her again, by accident. A networking event downtown, full of familiar faces. She spotted me first. I could feel it before I turned. She approached slowly, unsure if she should. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. Her voice was polite, almost rehearsed. She asked how I'd been. I said good. She asked if I'd moved on. I said, forward. There was a pause. She looked down, fingers tracing the edge of her glass. I could see the reflection of the Ritz-Carlton sign in it, the same one that had once framed her lies. She whispered that she made a mistake. I didn't argue. Mistakes are accidental. What she did was intentional. Before leaving, she said she missed the way I used to look at her. I told her, that man doesn't exist anymore. And I meant it. When I walked out into the cold night, the city lights didn't feel heavy anymore. I wasn't running from anything. I was walking towards something cleaner. The kind of silence that doesn't ache. The kind that finally belongs to you. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, but it never rebuilds what you chose to dismantle. Months turned into a year, and the space she left behind became something different. Not empty, Not lonely, just quiet. The studio grew into a name people respected. I hired new designers, expanded into new projects, and for the first time, my work felt like it truly belonged to me. Every blueprint, every clean line, every structure was a reminder that order can rise from ruin if you're patient enough to design it right. One morning, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo of a model home I designed years ago. On the back, she had written, "I finally understand." No signature, just those 3 words. I turned the photo over again, studied the lines of the building, the symmetry, the balance, and thought how ironic it was that she now saw what respect really looked like, only after losing it. That evening, I drove to the coast. The Volvo hummed against the highway, steady as ever. I parked near the cliffs where the ocean met the horizon and watched the sun drop behind the waterline. For the first time in a long while, I didn't think about her. I thought about the man I'd become, the one who doesn't chase closure, who doesn't seek validation, who knows the quiet power of walking away without slamming the door. I pulled out my phone and opened Apple Notes, the same place where it all began. The checklist that once held my escape plan was still there, each line neatly marked as complete. I added one more entry, just 3 words, peace achieved quietly. Before heading back, I looked once more at the darkening horizon. Somewhere out there, she was probably trying to rebuild, to be noticed again. But that was no longer my concern. Some people learn by losing the one who never raised his voice, never broke a thing, and never came back. As I started the car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror and realized something simple. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And that was everything. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.